I'm making this video in full defense of the design of the Ghoul as he appears in the teaser trailer and promotional photos for Amazon's Fallout TV show. Now, the first look at the highly anticipated live-action iteration of the much-beloved franchise has finally come out, and a lot of people are loving it. They love the look of the world, they love the look of many of the characters, and they love the tone of what the show seems to be. The translation of the Fallout games onto the small screen, it looks to be done effectively. But there are some who are being quite vocal about their thoughts on some of the characters that have popped up within this teaser trailer. I've already made a video in full defense of the Cyclops Overseer, played by Chris Parnell, as he appears in the teaser trailer. If you want to watch that, feel free to check it out in any of the links. But when you get past the conversations about that specific character, there are those who are voicing their concerns about the look of the Ghoul, played by the fantastic Walton Goggins. They're saying, yes, though he looks great, they're taking issue that it seems that the original source material has been toned down for the TV show. Now, I just want to throw in my 2 cents and say, I've got a few reasons as to why I think the show decided to go the way that it has gone. Okay, so to start with, those who are saying that the Ghoul in the TV show doesn't look as horrific as the Ghoul in the games, I totally get it. I am 100% with you. The Fallout series has been out for over a quarter of a century, and though a large group of the fanbase are made up of those who played the original Fallout 1 and 2, a large portion of the players had their first introduction to the universe with Fallout 3. And so their first impressions of ghouls would have been in this 3D setting, and so of course they are the litmus test to any other ghouls that pop up in any other media. And for anybody who's confused about what a ghoul actually is, a ghoul is a human who has gone through the effects of constant irradiation, whether it be from the initial blasts of the nuclear bombs in 2077 or exposure to the latent radiation that persisted for the next 2 centuries, whether through the drinking water or through different environments. Their skin has deteriorated, their voice has become raspy, they've lost a lot of different functions, but they've gained this regenerative ability within their cells that makes them basically immortal. Some retain their wits, memories, and faculties from before they turned into ghouls. These are just known as necrotic posthumans. But then there are those whose mind deteriorates until they are ferocious necrotic posthumans, i.e. feral ghouls, and these are shuffling cannon fodder who just go about attacking whatever they see. But when we actually look at the aesthetics of ghouls, we have to go way back to when they're introduced in Fallout 1. We don't get to get the best look at ghouls within the game because of the nature of it. The pulled back isometric angle of the gameplay means that everything's at a bit of a distance, but we do get to see some up close when we're in conversation with those who can still have conversations, one of which being Set, who is just one of 2 named ghouls within the game. And when you take an up close look at Set is revolting. The eye is all disfigured. It looks like pieces are just going to be falling off. He looks like you could smell him a mile off. He looks like he's sticky to the touch. He looks like if you were to speak to him, you'd be able to taste him through the air. And so our introduction to ghouls as an entity are despicable. They are revolting, they are horrific, and the only emotion that we have towards them is pity that humans ended up like this. These poor, horrid creatures where we, as the Vault Dweller, managed to live in almost perfect harmony. We have come out as humans and we meet other humans in the wasteland, and yet these sorry examples of humanity that are holding on to life, it's horrid. Fallout 2 carries on the same design, but we're introduced to a lot more named ghouls, around 15 to 20 of them, and we can see, yes, they have different personalities, they have different functions, they have different places within society. But then we come to Fallout 3 and we get to see them in 3D, and that gives the opportunity for a makeover. And though they may not be as disfigured and falling apart as the ghouls of Fallout 1 and 2, they are horrific to look at. The ghouls you can converse with, you can see that they are lesion-ridden, their faces are pox, their arms are completely decayed. There are text lines about how bad they smell, about keeping the distance, about going near them, them being squishy and them being just rancid. And then we get to the feral ghouls, and I guarantee that every Fallout 3 player has some sort of emotional memory about seeing a feral ghoul for the first time. And then a feral ghoul reaver? Nah, forget that. And New Vegas is a lot of the same textures and assets from Fallout 3, but then we get to Fallout 4. And a jump in graphics and what can actually be done within the engine means that there's another chance for a makeover. And the ghouls in Fallout 4 look decidedly different to their original iterations. I remember loading up Fallout 4 for the first time and coming across a ghoul and going, these are ghouls? Really? Compared to the shuffling, horrid, necrotic, rotten, lesion-ridden monstrosities, these are somewhat pruny, shriveled, walking nutsacks. And of course, having spent over 2,000 hours in Fallout 3, and I don't know how long in Fallout New Vegas, I had that mindset of this is what a ghoul should look like. But then playing Fallout 4, yes, they were different, but it didn't take long for me to then accept it and for it to actually enhance the experience. Because the way that I see it is that the ghouls from Fallout 1 through to New Vegas are the science fiction fantasy viewpoint of what humans who've been exposed to radiation would look like. Fallout 4 and 76 are what humans would look like if exposed to radiation, but through the lens of realism. And the toning down of the horrificness of the ghouls in Fallout 4 actually helped to build the world and base it a lot more in realism. Because when you're playing the previous games, it feels like you're playing a fantasy. There's a suspension of disbelief because you're fighting these horrible draugrs and there's no connection to them because there's no way a human could actually look like that. But with Fallout 4 and 76, there's a distinct possibility that that's what humans could look like. The realism of it makes you actually a lot more connected to the characters, a lot more connected to who you're fighting, and you find a lot more empathy within the stories that pop up, especially when you come across the environmental storytelling that Bethesda is very much known for. When you go, oh, this one that I've just killed, this horrible feral ghoul, that was a person. Not just in their story, in their demeanor, but also the look of them, you can see that was a human. And so when it comes to the ghoul in the Fallout TV show, you can see that he's based a lot more on the designs of Fallout 4, especially Hancock. When I see the ghoul, especially in his hat, I am getting major Hancock vibes, and I am totally here for it. I really love the fact that he is toned down, that he's not as horrific looking as compared to something in Fallout 3, because it just feels a lot more realistic. It feels like this is what a human could look like 200 years after a nuclear blast. But it's not just the fact that the ghoul's aesthetic is more based in realism, it's the fact that his appearance has to tread a line dramaturgically. Because the character of the ghoul is one of the three protagonists within the show. We have the representative of the Vault world, Lucy. We have the representative of the Brotherhood of Steel, Maximus. And then we have the representative of the pre-war and currently developing world, that is the ghoul. And because he is one of the three protagonists, we have to empathize with him. We have to feel a connection to him and we have to root for him because we get to have a glimpse of Cooper Howard, the man who the ghoul was before the bombs dropped. We get to see him there at the end of the teaser trailer on a horse with who I'm presuming is his daughter, and then everything changes. And we're going to get to see glimpses of his story, the man who he was and the man who he has now become as he's trying to survive in the maelstrom of this ever-changing world. And so whether he is purely a protagonist or somewhat of an anti-hero, we have to really want to invest in his story. He isn't the villain of the piece, we want to root for him. And if you have a character who is disgusting to look at, you're going to have a hard time wanting to actually connect with them. They could have absolutely made the ghoul utterly horrific, things falling off his face, falling apart, just horrid to look at. But why would we want to invest in this person's story? Why would we want to care if every time he pops up on screen we're going, oh, that's not nice? How could we connect to him on a heart-to-heart basis? How could we empathize with this character? How could we feel sad for his story and want to care for him when we can't even look at him? A good example is the movie Darkman. He is totally disfigured, and when you see him without the bandages on, oh, it's horrible to look at. You don't want to look at him, you turn away. That's why he spends most of the film bandaged up, because he's still our protagonist. We still have to root for him. We want him to succeed. We want him to win. We want him to be victorious in his mission to resolve his conflict. But do it whilst you're all masked up, mate, because I can't be looking at your face right now. And that's exactly what would happen if they made the ghoul more horrific. If you were to have a Fallout 3 ghoul as one of these characters, imagine if you're watching The Last of Us and the clicker was a good guy. You wouldn't want to know. You wouldn't want to follow this journey, because how can I be happy and want someone to succeed when they look like they're just going to give me a disease by making eye contact with them. No, thank you. And so ultimately toning down the severity and the horrificness, I've used that word a lot in this video, but I think it's the most apt word to use to describe ghouls, to tone down the horrificness of what the ghoul looks like, serves the show brilliantly. Because what we need to remember is this TV show isn't made solely for Fallout fans. It's made for a wider audience to bring people in who've never even heard of Fallout to watch the show. And so you need to have a character that people can relate to and want to watch, want to enjoy watching and go, whoa, that's odd, that's strange, but it's realistic. And the thing is, his design is realistic. I really love the ghoul's design, the sunken eyes, the lack of the nose. It's wonderful. He looks like a man who has been through it. And now, of course, there may be some pushback to that as, oh, they're changing the law as to why he doesn't look so bad because ghouls should look worse. This is the thing with ghoulism. It isn't a cookie cutter process. When you've got things like deathclaws, mole rats, gulpers, fog crawlers, trogs, super mutants, all of those mutated creatures within the wastelands, there's somewhat of a linear process to their look. When you've got the purely irradiated mutations such as blowflies, mole rats, and radroaches, they have evolved over time together, and so they look very similar because they've all come up from the same place. When you've got things like super mutants, they have all been made the same way, and so there is a sort of facsimile process to them. They're not going to differ that much within their looks. But ghoulism is degenerative, and it comes in various forms. There are two main ways to become a ghoul. Either you were at ground zero on October 23rd, 2077 and experienced the fallout of the blasts from the nuclear bombs, suffering thermal and radioactive burns across your body, or you turned in the wasteland after being exposed to great deals of radiation. You can see that all the time. There are plenty of pre-war ghouls, and then there are those who've only just turned. Take Camp Searchlight in Fallout New Vegas, for example. That was populated with NCR soldiers, and then the Legion put in a radiation bomb, bam, the entire town suddenly turned into ghouls. And then you have those who purposely turn themselves into ghouls, such as Desmond Lockhart and Eddie Winter, who turn themselves into ghouls before the bombs dropped, and then those who turn themselves into ghouls purposely, such as Hancock, who took some experimentation in order to gain longer life. But anyway, I'm going off the point there. Two main ways to turn into a ghoul. But as I say, it's degenerative, and people are at different stages compared to how they look after themselves and the environment that they find themselves in. We know that sane, rational ghouls can eventually turn into feral ghouls. When we talk to Roy Phillips in the Tenpenny Tower quest in Fallout 3, he describes how ghouls living in bad areas can eventually lose their mind and turn into feral ghouls because of the environment. Having bad diet, bad upkeep, bad amounts of radiation to live in, bad environment to live in, the mind degrades, the body degrades, and eventually they become these ferocious post-necrotic humans. And to just boil down all of that, a ghoul's stage in life is going to be completely different to another ghoul's stage in life. The amount of decomposition, the amount of radiation that they've been experienced to, the state of their body, the state of their mind. No two ghouls will be the same. You could have had two ghouls that experienced the blast at the same time, but the life that they lived post that, going to have completely different results. And so the state and look of the ghoul in the Fallout TV show, that's just where he's at life. That's where he's at on this journey of his existence, and that's what he looks like. That's how much the radiation has affected him. Who knows, maybe he'll decompose more in the future, but right now, that's what he looks like. And from a practical standpoint, you can't have too many prosthetics on. You can't make it too disgusting. You can't make it too outlandish because there's an actor underneath all that. And you need to see the nuances of an actor's face. When Jim Carrey played the Grinch, they could have made a massive mask go over his face that basically just blocks out any nuance. But no, they made something very close-fitting that hugged his natural features so that the subtleties of the movement of his mouth, his nose, and his eyes was still exemplified and seen. And that's what has to happen here. Walton Goggins, as I said before, is a fantastic actor. And to lose the canvas of an actor's face is the worst thing that can happen because so much of the story is held not with the delivery delivery of the lines, but in the subtleties of reactions, of the movement of the eyes, of the twitch of an eyebrow, of the flaring of a nostril, the curl of a lip. The face is a blank canvas ready to project a story, and so when it comes to prosthetics and having to make someone look different, there's always a difficulty because you don't want to lose that. I honestly think just even in the moment of seeing the Ghoul turn to face the camera, there is so much character in the smile and the way that he looks around. It would be a shame to add more to it, to add more clay and everything to it, to drown that out, because you want to see his wonderful performance that I know he's going to give. There's no doubt about that. Plenty of doubts you can have about the show, the story, where it's going to go, the direction, how faithful it is to the game. But one thing we cannot doubt is that Walton Goggins is going to give a fantastic performance. And to just talk about the Ghoul himself, what I find interesting is that he is just called the Ghoul. Because ghouls in the games haven't actually been the biggest faction. Because you've got all of the different humans and the factions that they belong in, then you've got super mutants, and you've got ghouls, and they've never made the biggest impact. Throughout the games, you can just get one Ghoul companion. You can have multiple human companions, a super mutant companion, a robot companion, but there's always only one Ghoul companion. You've got Karen, however you want to say his name, in Fallout 3. You've got Raoul in Fallout New Vegas, and you've got Hancock in Fallout 4. Just trying to remember off the top of my head. But the Ghoul community doesn't have the biggest impact within the game. A lot of them are just feral cannon fodder, but for those who have their faculties and wits about them, they are just seemingly dropped in randomly amongst collections of humans, amongst cities and towns, or there are only a couple of dedicated Ghoul areas, such as Underworld being probably the biggest one that happened in Fallout 3, and then the Slog in Fallout 4, where it's just a co-op of farmers. And to get back to my point, I think because of that, we're only going to see one Ghoul within the TV show, and that Ghoul is going to be the Ghoul. Having a name such as the Ghoul kind of puts the entire thing on them. If he was just to be known as Cooper, then we'd go, oh, okay, he's Cooper. Now we can differentiate him because we know his name from any other ghouls that might pop up. But I just feel that the fact that he's called the Ghoul and he has such a lengthy story, that being from pre-war, seeing his life before and seeing him then, I have this feeling, and it's a good feeling, and it's something I'm excited to experience, that he's probably going to be the only Ghoul we see. And I like that. I think it may muddy it too much if there's big communities of ghouls and we just have to accept, oh, okay, that exists. Like if we're watching a fantasy TV show and you go, okay, these are elves, these are dwarves, these are orcs. You just go, okay, that's that. But to put the focus on one character being a representative of that faction, I say faction loosely, but they are this section of humanity that has been born from the bombs. For him to be just the sole representative of that life makes it far more interesting. If you're watching a fantasy TV show and there's only one dwarf, one elf, that's fascinating. And I think this is going to have just one Ghoul, which is going to make it even more interesting to see how he reacts to the world, and more importantly, how the world reacts to him. Because one of the main uses of ghouls within the games is to highlight discrimination, to highlight prejudice and disparities against these people who have just unfortunately been exposed to radiation, which is kind of unavoidable in a world that was destroyed by nuclear bombs. But the hate that they get from those who haven't turned Ghoul yet, because every seemingly normal human being has the possibility of turning into a Ghoul at any point. It just creates great discourse and a great moral and philosophical edge to a game which is basically about surviving amongst horrible creatures. And so yes, I think this is going to be our only Ghoul. I think he looks that way so that we can relate to him a lot better, and we can empathize with him a lot better, and we can feel connected to him a lot better. And I feel that his design is wonderfully in keeping with the progression that the games have gone through. It grounds him in realism, and it's going to add a great flavor to the show, which already looks so interesting. So there we go, folks. That was me prattling on for, I don't know how long about the design of the Ghoul in the Fallout TV show. Let me know if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, down below in the comments. I'm so excited and happy to carry on the discussion. If you like this video, feel free to give it a like and make sure to subscribe, because I will be making more videos on the Fallout TV show as it comes out, as more information comes out, and as the series comes out. I'm going to be breaking down those episodes bit by bit. And also, if you enjoy videos about video games, there's plenty more different content that's going to be coming on this channel I'm working on right now. So yes, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on all of that. I'm going to end this video because my voice is getting hoarse. I'm starting to sound like I'm turning into a ghoul myself. You don't want to hear my voice anymore. I don't want to hear my voice anymore. My friends, luck and more to you all. Catch you next time.